Alright guys, so the next step in this process that I want to show you guys is adding a little bit of movement to your scene, because right now it's pretty static. We could add a little bit of wind to this foliage, but that can only go so far. So what I want to show you is how to add some fog layers that are going to add a little bit of movement to your scene. So the first thing that we want to do is we want to import our atmosphere into our project, and this is just an MP4 H.264 file that I've rendered out of After Effects. And all we're going to do is right click in here, and we're going to go in here to media, and then we're going to click on media player, and we're going to check video output media texture asset, click OK, and we're just going to name this something that's going to create a media texture, and we're also going to have this media player. So if we double click on our media player, it's going to open this window, and what we want to do is go and find our atmosphere 01 file, and it's going to be this one. We're going to double click that, and we're going to hit save. Okay, and we can close out of this. So now what we're going to do, we have our texture here. We can create a plane. So I'm going to go up here and search plane, and we can just drag one into our scene here. And then what we're going to do is we're going to take our scale, we're going to unclick this, and we're going to do 16, and then hit tab and click 9. And what that's going to do is just going to set our aspect ratio for us. We want our aspect ratio of this plane to match the aspect ratio of our footage, which is 16:9. So what I'm going to do is just rotate this, and we have our plane. Okay, so I'm just going to take this and drag it onto our plane. That's going to create a material for us. We can double click on this material, go into it, and I'm going to maximize this window, make it bigger. And what we want to do here is we're going to map our opacity, and we're going to just set up our texture for this video material. So what we want to do, since we want it to have its transparency, this video doesn't actually have transparency yet, so we need to create that. So what we're going to do is go to our blend mode, and we're going to click that and click on translucent. And we can alt click on the base color here so that we get rid of that. And we're going to take our texture sample and drag out the RGB, and we're going to go into a multiply node. We're going to multiply by a scalar parameter. So we're going to hold S on the keyboard and click. It's going to create a scalar parameter, and we're just going to call this strength. The setting here will determine the strength or opacity of our fog layer. So what we're going to do is take this multiply node and drag it into our emissive color. All right. And then what we're going to do is go down here and create another scalar parameter, and we're going to call this one opacity. So this is going to be the actual opacity of our fog layer. And we can set our default value, and what I like to do when I'm doing these fog layers, in order to create transparency, I like to set the multiply value strength for the emissive color to be really high and the opacity to be really low. And what that's going to do is it's just going to have the bright areas of our image, which is the fog, is going to be brighter, and the dark images are going to go away. So I set this opacity down to 0.01. And then I'm going to set the strength value up to something like 70, for example. And that's going to create a pretty good level of opacity for our fog asset. I'm going to click save on this. And now we can see we just have this white layer, and that's because we have to set up so that it will actually play in our sequence. So if I go up to our cinematics and I go to our camera move to here, that's our sequence. Just ignore all these other fog layers that I have in here. So what we're going to do is go and we're going to add a media track so that our media player can actually play this when we play through our sequence. So we go up here to track, and I'm going to do media track, and then I'm going to click this little plus sign on the media, and we're going to click on atmosphere 01, which is what we just created. And then the last thing that we have to do is right click on our media track and go up here to edit section. We can click on our media texture, and what we need to do is set up our media texture so that it plays properly. So we're going to click on this ATM01 tutorial video because that's the one we just created. And now what we can do is just drag this out, and we want to drag this all the way to the end. We can always reposition this. So at the start here, that is the start of our clip playing, and this will be the end of our clip playing. It's not an infinite clip, so it's not going to play forever. I've faded it out so that it organically dissolves into the background. So you can see that our fog clip is actually playing, which is what we want. So the other thing that we need to do real quick is go into our material, And you can see now we're seeing our actual fog showing up on this material display. I'm going to set this a little higher to something like 100. It depends on your scene, so your settings may vary. But the other thing that I want to do is go into our material here and set this to two-sided. And that way we can rotate this around to any side and it's going to properly display. So now if we flip this around, for example, we can flip it to the other side and see the opposite side and it's still going to display. If you don't check two-sided, it's not going to display on both sides. So that's an important thing to do. And then the last thing that we want to do, just to make sure that everything is as it should be, is go down to our plane here. And if you move this down, you're going to see that it's actually going to be casting a shadow on our ground. And we don't want that because it's just going to cast the shadow of a plane. If we had an actual opacity or alpha mask for this layer, we could have the shadow and properly cast a shadow, but we don't have that for this material. So what we're going to do is go into our details here and just turn off our cast shadow. And that's not going to give us that weird shadow anymore. So that's all going to be fixed up then. So now we can see our fog is all behaving properly and moving as we need it to. And if we want, what we can do is actually move these clips around if we want to have them start at a different time in the animation. As you can see, that I just did that one. You know, you can really mess with this and line it up the way that you want to. So maybe what I would do is stagger some of these a little bit just to kind of have a bit of variation in here in terms of the thickness of the fog, since the fog does fade over time. But that is essentially how you set up these fog cards, and that's going to allow you to really add a lot of movement to your scene. You can also use this to composite using video clips if you want to as well. So that's a really useful technique